There are so many pressure packed occupations in this world, and what you do matters. But as far as I'm concerned, when you're taking care of other people and taking care of kids and keeping kids safe from abuse, man, it's hard, but it's so important. And we're going to talk about that. Ashley Krause is our guest next. Well, the heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people like you and me, just business folks, agency leaders, community leaders, people trying to get something good done. We wake up in the morning, we swing our feet out of bed, we put them on the floor, we go to get it, and something wants to slap us in the face. Some kind of pressures rise that want to stop us from what we're trying to do. That's the pressure. We're on purpose, and I'm interested in what we do about that. And that's what the show is all about. If you're back, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Wherever you find us, if you could do me a favor and like us or follow us or subscribe, at the very minimum, tell a friend, tell your mom, tell somebody, because when more people know about this show and the difference we're trying to make in attitudes and behaviors and effectiveness in the world, the better off we're all going to be. So we do appreciate it. And thank you very much for being a part of this show. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations. They're also in Jacksonville, Florida. They're also in the upstate capital region of New York. It's sales training, business growth, revenue generation, but it's on purpose. It's not tricks. It's not gimmicks. It's not fun and games. It's serious sales training for serious professionals. And that's the kind of business you want to run, and that's the kind of people you want representing you. Then Ruby Group, Sandler by the Ruby Group is where you need to go. And if you do give them a call, I promise, I don't even care if you buy anything, and neither do they. If you talk to them, any of their trainers, it's going to be one of the best calls you make. I promise you that. So you can check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. I am excited to talk with you today with kind of a deeper thought, because I there's nothing more important. You know this about me if you've watched the show at all, than education and students and young people and kids. My wife, I've mentioned a few times, has been in the trenches working with young people and helping them to overcome things that, sometimes and most likely aren't any fault of their own. That's what this show is all about today. So I'm really looking forward to introducing to you Ashley Krause. She's the executive director at the Children's Center of Medina County. She's also on the board with Cleveland Angels, and she's making a difference. And I'm excited to welcome you. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I'm excited to be here.
We talked about the heat is on. You're sitting outside, and it's probably like 90 degrees today. So if we start to see you sweat.
Yeah. If you see me wiping, well, sorry.
Yeah. We'll know the pressure is getting to you. So
yeah.
Ashley, tell me what's good. Tell me a little bit about your purpose, why you do what you do, and what drives you every day, because your job is hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging that. So as you mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Children's Center of Medina County, and I've been there a little over 4 years now. I love it. I love the organization. I love the mission. I love what we do. A little bit of history before I started in Medina County. I worked for Children's Services in Geauga County and did child abuse investigations for just about 7 years when I was there. Worked really closely with a team of individuals who assessed safety of children in their home and made a determination if children were able to safely remain in their home or had to be placed outside of the home until some safety issues were rectified. And so I loved that. I loved working there. I loved working with children and families. I loved being in a position where, I got to respond to those situations. And as you mentioned, it's a hard job. And I always say to people when I talk about this world that certainly takes a special person to do this. I'm so proud of the team that I work with at the Children's Center and the good work that they do. And really, I know we're going to talk a lot about this. I am sure of it. Self-care and making sure we're taking care of ourselves and what some of those pressures might do to us as we're working with children going through these situations. And so I'm looking forward to sharing more about that and talking about that as well.
And I am too. And I'm glad we're talking about it, because I don't think people understand. And I'm not going to go long into it, but there's the other side of the tracks, folks, that most of us don't see, regardless of what side of the tracks you're on. But there's the other side. And Ashley, can you explain to us a little bit about what your world looks like on a day-to-day basis and what these kids are kind of going through? And then I want to talk about what it does to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a nonprofit organization in the city of Medina, but we serve the entire county. So we work really, really closely with what's called multidisciplinary team members. And those are different professionals in law enforcement, children's services, medical professionals, mental health professionals, anybody who might be involved in an investigation of child abuse in our community are those that we work with closely on a daily basis. And so we provide trauma-informed care to children and families in the community. And what that looks like is our Child Advocacy Center is a center in which we provide forensic interviews of children who have been sexually abused. Majority of the interviews that we do at our Child Advocacy Center are children who have experienced sexual abuse, but we also interview children who have been physically abused, neglected, have witnessed violence, have been a part of another violent experience. And so with our team members, what we do in our Child Advocacy Center is we all work together to provide a wraparound service to these families that are coming in. And so that is something that is critical and is the whole goal of the Child Advocacy Center, right? Like we're all working together to provide the care and the service to these children and families who come in with the goal that they're going to come into the Child Advocacy Center, they're going to share their experience of what happened to them, and they're going to have to do that one time, and all of our team is there, and we're in a position where we can help them move forward and help them heal. So that's just a little part of what we do. That's part one. It's not little, but we provide other services. We also have a foster care visitation center in which children who are separated from their families and their birth parents have to come to our center to visit with them supervised. So we have 4 visitation rooms in a lower level of the Children's Center, and we provide supervised visitation in collaboration with Medina County Children's Services to provide that. We also have a human trafficking coalition. So education and awareness, something that your wife might have experienced while working in the schools. A lot of work done in schools with teens and with professionals about human trafficking, what to look out for, what to do if you find yourself or someone you know in that situation. And most recently, we just added what's called CASA. That is Court Appointed Special Advocates. That's our newest program that just launched really within the last month. We hired a program director for that program and launched that. And those are the CASAs are individuals who are volunteers who represent the best interests of children in juvenile court. So lots of things going on at the Children's Center. As I mentioned in the beginning of the call, I've got a super strong team, and I'm really proud of everybody because the work that we do day in and day out is really hard, and it looks different every day, for sure.
And I want people to, I imagine you're looking for volunteers for CASA. If you're interested in CASA, it's an amazing program. And if people want to get involved in anyone that has a heart for kids, these kids need someone to stand up for them when the legal proceedings go around. And so that's an amazing program. I hope they'll reach out to you and reach out really to anyone in your own community, wherever you are, because that's a great program. Now, I want to dig a little deeper, though. So you talked about your team and you talked about all the things that you do, but as an uninformed person, and most of my listeners are not really in this world that we're talking about now. Is it really that much of a problem? You've got all these different services and all these things. And what I was getting at when I talked about across the tracks, I don't think people understand the need. The number of kids in the foster system, the number of sexual abuse cases, the number of physical abuse cases, the famine that is going around. I don't think people get it. And I'm wondering if you can give me some kind of way to understand how rampant the problem is, because it's bigger than we think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you asking me to share that perspective, because it's just one of those things that no one wants to believe it happens in their backyard. Right?
They don't get it.
Yeah. And I wish it didn't. I always tell people that I wish the Children's Center could close our doors, right? Who says that about a job? Our team talks about it all the time. If there was a day where there was no child abuse and neglect, we win.
But there's not, is there?
Right. And that's, we're not there, and we're not close to there. And it's
getting worse.
Yeah. And anytime we do outreach events and we talk about the Children's Center and we talk about numbers and we talk about what happens in Medina County, the amount of people who come up to us and say, I didn't even know this was happening here. Yeah. And that's the whole point of why we go out and we do those things, right? Because if it has never happened to you, that is amazing. We don't want this to ever happen to anybody, but that's not the reality. This does happen to people. And at some point in your life, you're going to come across somebody, a family member, a friend, a coworker, or you're going to experience or witness something in which something happens to a child. And we always tell people when we present about the Children's Center, we want you to know who we are. We want you to know we exist because we are here to help children and families, because this is happening. This is happening at a heavy rate in Medina County, in all of our surrounding counties, nationally. This is not something that just because you live in one county or another, it doesn't happen there. It happens everywhere. And, it knows no bounds. It just because, it doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter your economic status. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation. None of that matters. This happens to anybody and everybody, unfortunately.
Yeah. And everywhere. I think that's the thing that
Everywhere,
people don't
yeah.
understand. It's not about how much money you make in your town. It's not about how good you look and how nice your buildings are. It's happening in the nicest looking house on the nicest looking street.
Absolutely.
And that's the hardest part. And I don't care where my listeners or watchers are living. It's happening in your town, within your walking distance. It's happening.
Yeah.
Typically. And that's just, it's unfortunate. And I think it's getting worse for some reason. And I don't understand it. And can you validate that for me? Because it feels like the problems, maybe there's not more problems, maybe there are, but they seem stronger, like deeper. They're bigger problems these kids are going through today. And I don't know if it's economics or post-COVID or what it is, but it's worse.
Yeah, and there's many different factors. I personally believe that are causing this rise in child abuse, or not maybe even perhaps a rise, but people are hearing about it more.
That's a good point.
I think that's the reality of the situation that we're in. Post-COVID, everyone was stuck at home during COVID. There weren't any mandated reporters for children to communicate with. People weren't going to school. They weren't going to work. They weren't going to counseling. And so, after that, there's a lot of things that are happening after COVID, not only just with things that were happening while kids were at home, but just with mental health, right? Like we were all stuck in a position where we literally couldn't leave our homes, and that impacts mental health for adults, for children, for professionals. And so I think that, we still continue to see the fallout of that, of mental health, just from that isolation and really just the world that we were living in. Like, who would have thought we were going to go through that pandemic? And we had no idea how to handle that. And so, it's just seeing some of that fallout. And, I think the biggest thing is that people are talking about it more. I even just in my career, in the last 11 years, in the last 11 years, people didn't talk about child abuse, and you didn't talk about what happened, and you didn't talk about your mental health. Like, we don't go to counseling, right? Like that's a lot of people's perspective on that. And that has really, for the better, has shifted and has changed over the last decade. It is okay to go to counseling. Everybody should go to counseling. I say that all the time. Like, there is no harm in talking to somebody about things that you're feeling and what you're experiencing and how to manage those emotions, especially after, as a nation, we went through COVID and just figuring out, how to handle all of those things that we went through. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing, is that we've kind of taken away, in my perspective, that don't talk about it anymore. If you go to counseling, like, that's a secret. We don't tell anybody that. It is so very normal. And I love that people address what they're going through. Yeah. And, and as you start addressing some of those things that you're going through, perhaps in counseling, other things come out that you're like, wait a minute, like, I experienced this and I want to talk about it and I want to get help for that. And so we're seeing that a lot as well.
And so when you are helping these young people and your whole team is helping, we can't fix it. And we're not going to fix it during this podcast.
Yeah.
We can't fix it on a daily basis. It is a thing. What's that like for you? Let's talk about the pressure, because I know from experience with my wife, I know that you work all day tirelessly to fix things. And then we send these kids home back to where the problems are happening in the first place. And it's really hard. So what's that like for you on a daily basis to have to deal with that over and over and over again and hear these stories over and over and over again?
Yeah. And as you acknowledged in the beginning of this, and we've talked about it a couple of times, it's tough. Days are tough at the Children's Center. Days are tough whether you are the forensic interviewer who is the one face-to-face with these children day in and day out. Days are tough if you're the family advocate who is sitting in the family room with the caregivers who are experiencing something that they never thought their family was going to go through. And days are tough if you're a Children's Center team member who is in the building while these things are going on, and you know what kids are talking about and you know what's happening. So we all certainly feel it on different levels. And so we talk a lot about self-care as a team, and really just personally with me. I have 2 young kids of my own. And so I am in a position where that kind of puts me on guard with my kids, and I see the things that happens to other kids, and that's probably the hardest part for me, is educating my kids at a young age about prevention and about if something happens to you, what to do, who to tell, educating them young about private parts. I tell people once they start to know what a private part is, you educate them about it, you talk to them about it, and so that is another shift that we're seeing. We're trying to educate parents about. Just because your kid is 3, if they know what a private part is, educate them about it. And so maybe that is just something because of the world that I'm in. For me, that is like a no, that has to happen. So I would think, I would say the pressure for me is raising my own kids at this point and just really seeing the things that go on in the world and trying to protect them, but also making sure I'm balancing that with they have to have a childhood and they have to explore and they have to have experiences, but educating them about if something happens to them, what to do, and working through how to prevent child abuse with my own family. And the other piece of it is, once a family walks in the front door of the Children's Center, that is an opportunity for them to start healing. And so getting them in the front door is a win. And so we always talk about measuring success. What does that look like, right? Not all of these cases are prosecuted, which is frustrating. That puts the pressure on, right? And that's at no fault of prosecutors. That's at no fault of attorneys. That is just, these cases are hard and they're hard to prove. And, a lot of times victims don't disclose for a long time. And that's because of, certain threats that they have received, or they don't know that it's wrong. There's so many reasons. And so that it's one of those things that once they walk in that front door, regardless of where that case goes from that day, that's a win for us. That's a success. Getting them in the door, getting them referrals to services that they need, letting them know there are people here for them, and most importantly, that we believe the child. And that is critical. That's number one. We believe the child. You walk in that front door and you tell us what's happened to you. We believe you and we're going to help you and your family.
Yeah, you're going to dive right in and you're going to get at the problem and try to help in that way and let the rest shake itself out at that moment. People listening now aren't working with kids that are in that trauma situation or having that problem, but they do have issues. They've started a business that's not working out.
Oh, yeah.
They're having to close a business that was their whole lifelong dream. They're trying to get to retirement and they're never going to make it. There's all kinds of troubles that get in the way of everyone listening, and they're all very, very difficult. And yet we come back and we get it. What kind of advice do you give to someone who's starting to lose hope? Because I have to assume that the shiny side of the next day and the opportunity doesn't always show itself at night when your eyes won't close on the pillow. Like, how do you get over the really, really, really hard times?
Looking at the typical salesperson, everything they do day in and day out, if we simplify all of that and really boil it down, they have 2 superpowers. First superpower that salespeople have is how they behave. Second superpower they have is what they say. As a seller, we only have 2 problems. We either said something or did something that we should not have said or done, or we didn't say something or do something that we should have said or done.
When your eyes won't close on the pillow, like, how do you get over the really, really, really hard times?
Yeah, that's a good question, because that does happen often, right?
Sure.
There are so many, to all of us, and we talk about that. We have a tough job. Our team does tough stuff, but a lot of other people go through tough stuff, right? Like, there are a lot of difficult things that people go through, and life is hard. It's really hard. And when you throw something in it like this, like something happens to your child and you're already going through, a ton of other things in your life that are hard, it's very easy to lose hope. It really is. And so really just supporting families in a way that, as I mentioned, we believe your child, we believe something happened to them, and we're going to be here to help you through that. It may not go through a legal process. The person may not get arrested. Nothing may happen after they leave here today, but you know what did happen? Your child felt safe enough to share their story. And that's really number one, is that if anything, that is the most important thing, is that a child was able to share that. And what happens after that, as you mentioned, is really out of our control. And sometimes it's really out of the control of our multidisciplinary team members. I can say we have a really strong team of multidisciplinary team members, and they do everything that they can to address these cases. But sometimes some of those things are out of our control. And the pressure's on from families because they want to see something happen, and that's not always the reality of it. And so what I would say to someone if they're losing hope is that you've got people who care about you and who care about your child, and your child felt safe and comfortable enough to share what has happened to them, and they're going to be on their way to a pathway to healing and going to get the help that they need and that they deserve.
That's really good. What can people do to help? We go to the grocery store and we think we saw something or we heard a story or whatever it might be, and it's none of our business, right? But maybe it is. Like, what's a realistic expectation of the community when it comes to this kind of thing?
Yeah, one of our informal taglines that one of our board members came up with several years ago is child abuse is a community problem that requires a community solution, right? So everybody can do something. And that can be as little as you look up medinacountychildrencenter.org to learn about what we do, right? You are familiar with our services and the work that we do and what we provide. And so that should you come across somebody who's in that situation or you're in that situation yourself, we're here and what to do. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, which you will see blue pinwheels, which is a national symbol of child abuse prevention. And so that is something that every year Medina and really every community does something that represents child abuse prevention. So we in Medina do a community pinwheel walk. So coming up, it's a Sunday afternoon for a couple hours, hearing from a survivor. We always have a survivor speak, hearing what they've gone through and where their life is at now. It's so inspiring to hear that. And then, we put a pinwheel at the library to represent each investigated child abuse case from the year before. Just representing these children, we see you, we hear you, we value you, and you're being heard, and people want to help you and people want to protect you. So what people can do is really just make themselves aware that this is a community problem, not saying, oh, this doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen where I live. It doesn't happen on my street. Just coming to terms into the reality that this is happening everywhere, and just having a small conversation with somebody, you may find out that they're going through something that they haven't been able to tell anybody. Just that simple, hello, how are you doing today, can really open that door. So I guess what I would say in summary is just be kind to people, right? Be
Isn't that
kind.
always the way?
Yeah. People are going through things that we have no idea what they're going through. The world is hard. Things are hard. Life is tough. Economically, it's hard. It's been even harder after COVID. And just be kind and be nice to people. And you'd be surprised what people are going through and what they might confide in you. And if you know about the Children's Center, about the great work that's done in Medina County, you'll know where to direct them.
To help people understand, and you mentioned the pinwheels in Medina County, which is an affluent community, typically, at least in many ways, and definitely compared to others. How many pinwheels are out there? Like, what are the statistics, real quickly, so that people know the mass of the issue? They might not be aware of that.
Yeah. So at the Community Pinwheel Walk this year in April, we planted 495 pinwheels, which means each investigated child abuse or neglect case in 2024.
Wow.
And so those are cases that were actually opened and investigated, right? Children's Services in our community gets thousands of calls, I'm sure. And so, there are certain criteria that they follow, their state guidelines, their state laws. There are certain things that they do. And those are actually 495 investigations in which a Children's Services caseworker intervened, which, in our community,
that's
again,
huge.
When I tell people that number, they're like, what? Almost 500. And I'm like, yes, almost 500 investigations. Our Children's Services team in this community is amazing. They do really hard work as well. And we're here to support them and we're here to help them in any way that we can. But think about that, right? Like, their team last year saw 495 investigations, and that's just what they went out and saw. And there's so much more that goes into it when they actually
so many more that aren't reported, and there's so many and that aren't that could have been, and one's too many. But 500.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I
Hmm.
mean, it's mind blowing. What do you see as we talk about the future? And I know you're moving. You've
Hmm.
got some different things that
Yeah.
happening in your life and some new activities, but people are still going to be working the fight here in Medina, and I know you're going to be doing your thing where you go. What are the hurdles that you have to look out for in the future that are going to make your job tougher, make it harder on kids, make it more abusive? Like, is it society? Is it drugs? Is it just what's the issues that you can see that you're like, oh man, here it comes. We're going to have to get over this thing. Otherwise it's going to get a whole lot worse.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. Certainly substance abuse has a lot to do with things, mental health issues, dependency issues, but a lot of this as well is generational. And so we see a lot of times children who are abused by somebody who was abused as a child,
This
or
cycle.
yeah. And so that cycle, and that's one of the things that we talk about a lot with families who come in, especially when we have sibling situations, right, where we've got two siblings that are involved in something, and it's like, well, what happened to one sibling that is causing them to do this to the other sibling? And so we explore that. We want to know, like, if something happened to you, like, we want you to understand that that was not your fault, right? But what is going on, right? That where are kids learning this? And that's the biggest thing, is like, kids are learning this from somewhere. Everybody's on the internet, so that's a whole nother battle. That's another thing, is that you can find anything on the internet, and there's really good things about the
Boy.
internet and social
Oh,
media, and there are. I mean, we use it all the time. I personally, professionally, I love it, right?
of course.
But we have to make sure that we are knowing what our kids are looking at
Yeah.
online, because a lot of bad things are happening online, and that's really a shift we've seen since COVID as well. Is a lot of abuse is happening online.
Yeah.
Sextortion, exploitation, all that stuff is happening online. And so that's a whole nother factor that goes into what's happening to children. And parents just don't know, because they just don't know. And so
And
that's,
kids have
yeah.
access that
Mhm.
they've never had before. And I'm not one to stop people from doing anything they want to do. But a young person's mind doesn't understand what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can't tell the truth versus a lie, and there's a ton of that online, and AI, and there's all of these fake things that aren't
Mhm.
real, and these images that they see of, how it's okay to behave, or how, if they don't have a parent, and not everybody has that role model to say, hey, what are you doing? Let me see that. Let me pay attention, or you can't have it at all. There, that access is a really tough thing.
It is. And it's the piece of it where they might not have a parent that is in a position that can protect
Yeah.
them, or they just have a parent who
Doesn't
the
get it either.
internet has exploded and they just don't know what they don't know.
That's
Again,
that
like,
generational thing, right? Yeah.
yeah. And it's also, sometimes kids experience things, or parents hear about things that kids experience, and they don't even know that it's wrong, right? So that's a
Exactly.
ton of work that's being done. Something called Aaron's Law just passed in the state of Ohio, and has passed in several states throughout the United States, and it's about providing prevention education in schools to children all the way down to elementary school, to say, hey, if this happened to you, this is wrong.
This
Because
is not good.
years and years and years can go by, and kids, like, that's just what my family does,
It's
right? Like, how
acceptable.
would you know? Especially if
We
it's
only know what our parents teach
yeah,
us.
right. Especially if it's a generational thing. And so, not to say that every case is, because it's not. Not every case is generational, and
Understood.
not every situation is. Again, we talked about this in the beginning. It happens to everybody,
But
anywhere.
that is a reality.
But that is a reality that
Yeah.
sometimes kids just don't know because their parents didn't know. And so, just trying to educate parents about what to look for online, what to look for with their children. What are some ways that you can prevent this? Just even some little things about, who are your kids spending time with? Do you know their parents? Do you know, the parents of their friends that they're sleeping over their house? Just all of those things.
Yeah.
And, Brian, here's the other reality, is that I think the last stat I saw was 90% of victims know their abuser. And so people always think, like, this is, oh,
They know
this
them
is just,
personally.
right. This is just someone that, like, just they never met before and picked him up off the street. And, that's what we see in movies, right? Like, that's a lot of what
Yeah,
we
right.
see that is portrayed, is that, it's someone that just doesn't know the kid, never met them before, and this happens to them. And that's not the reality. These individuals are grooming these children. They know them. These kids trust them. And so, we're in situations where kids don't want to say anything because most of them are in positions where they love their abuser, right? Because it's their family member or it's a family friend or it's a sibling. And
They
so
don't want to get them in trouble.
yeah. And so that's tough. That's tough. That's tough for a kid to have to go through for sure.
So I assume that let's talk about how people could get a hold of you and your agency if they have issues. And I assume that in most every county, I don't know about Ohio, other states, it's similar. But how would someone go about if they knew, reaching out to you, but also in their own community? What should they do, and where should they go to reach out?
Yeah. So, of course, the first thing you're going to do if it's an emergency situation or a child is at imminent risk is going to be to call the police. The police are able to address emergency situations and funnel those through our team. But really what you're going to want to do is if you're in a situation where you are concerned about a child is to call the child abuse hotline in whatever community that you're in.
That's anywhere.
That's anywhere. And so that's your first call. So Medina County Job and Family Services has a child abuse hotline, and you can just Google it and you can look it up. You can call 24/7. And so they've got certain hours where someone at the office picks up, and then they've got certain hours where a sheriff's department representative picks up and then reaches out to them if they need to. And so they have that all worked out in a system, and most counties are like that, but that's going to be the first call. Of course, unless it's an emergency, as we mentioned, but you're going to want to call your county children's services agency and make a report, and then they're going to make a decision. Hey, is this something that we need to intervene? Do we need to investigate this case? And if it's something that meets the criteria for a child advocacy center forensic interview, then they get in touch with us to schedule it at that point. So we really rely on them. As I mentioned, they do amazing hard work, and they're a strong partner of ours. And so when they make referrals to us for forensic interviews, that's because someone called into their agency and made a report.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is that number, is there a national number that everyone can use, or is it more of a statewide or even county specific number?
Yeah, so there is a statewide number, but every county also has a number.
That's bureaucracy, right? It might not get to where it needs to go. Okay.
Yeah, so my recommendation is to just, you'll be able to find any county that
Google it and go.
Just Google it. Yeah, I mean, you could call the state if you need to, but they're going to direct you to the county.
Yeah, so go right directly to that. And before we wrap up, last time, I know you're interested, and I've read some great things about Cleveland Angels. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on there and what they're all about?
Yeah, so Cleveland Angels provides support to kids in foster care and to foster parents. And so they've got a couple different programs. I just recently joined their board this year, and I love their program and I love what they do. So they provide mentorship opportunities for youth who are in foster care. So partnering them up with a mentor that can help them as they're navigating through the foster care system, and really just going through some changes in their life, right? Especially our teens who might be aging out of care, who might not be able to return home or, won't be adopted because of their age or whatever their situation might be. And so just really providing that positive mentorship support to teens who are in foster care, as well as what's called a Love Box program. And so that is providing support to foster families. There's a lot of statistics in which it shows how quickly foster parents might have a placement in their home and things go awry and then they never foster again. And so I'm sure that you have had conversations with Lane and foster parents about that, because I know you've had some experience with that, but that's tough. That's tough for foster parents to go through and experience and be like, you know what, I don't think we can do this again. And so really what Cleveland Angels mission is to say, hey, you can do this again. We need foster parents. I'm going to do a plug for foster parents too. Plug for CASA volunteers, plug for foster parents. We need foster parents. Even in Medina County, right? Like people are like, we need foster parents in Medina County. Yes. If you are interested in being a foster parent, please reach out to Medina County Job and Family Services because we need them. So yes, anyways, back to Cleveland Angels. They provide those support to foster parents. And so they can continue to foster. And they have what they need to provide that safe space for children who are in the foster care system.
One of the things that we talk about, and you mentioned that I work with a little bit with Foster Medina County, and one of the things we talk about is don't say no before you know.
Yeah.
N-O before you K-N-O-W.
Yeah.
Don't say no before you know. Anyone that has fostering or adoption or anything at all that they can do to help in any way, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just this. Look into it. Check it out, talk to somebody. No one's going to hunt you down and force you to do anything, but get the information you need, because just asking some questions, what's it like to be, what are the issues? What should my concerns be? How expensive is it? How old are the kids? Like, just ask.
Yeah.
And people will love to tell you the answers, and then you can decide. But don't say no before you've asked those questions. Don't say no before you know.
Yeah, I love
is
that.
One of the things that we like to say. So I want to thank you And I want to thank everyone like you that
Thank
does
you.
the things that you do, because it's difficult. That's the understatement of the year. It's
Hmm.
probably the hardest job in the world, to have to listen to those things and to have to deal with that, and to realize that there's only so much you really can do in so many cases. And the other thing about it is you're not getting rich doing this. This is a passion of the heart, and I just
Hmm.
really appreciate you and everybody else that does the work that you do. And I thank you, all of you, for all that you do for kids.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And to those listening, anyone in this world or who supports people in this world who have experienced this, thank you. It's tough, but it's a rewarding job.
Yeah, that's the reward. That's
Yeah.
what you do it for. Ashley, thank you so much. That's Ashley Krause. She's the executive director at the Children's Center of Medina County. She's also on the board of the Cleveland Angels, as she talked about. And folks, I don't care what business you're in, things get hard, things get difficult, but you can overcome it because there's a purpose on the other side. For Ashley, it's the kids. For you, it's your customers. For you, it's driving towards whatever success you've built up and have in your sights. But it's worth it. It's worth it to overcome that pressure, because your purpose is everything. And so, again, thank you very much, Ashley, for being our guest on Purpose Under Pressure. This is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week, and we will see you next time on Purpose.